Welcome to The Explainer. So, picture this. It's 1969. A movie comes out that, get this, accidentally predicts a real-life space disaster. We're talking about the film Marooned. And today, we're going to dig into how its visual design, its whole visual architecture, solved what seemed like an impossible problem, and then became this really chilling prophecy.
Okay, just look at this timeline for a second. It's kind of wild. July 1969, we land on the moon. Huge moment for humanity. Then, just 5 months later, this movie Marooned hits theaters, showing this awful space disaster. And then, and this is the crazy part, less than 4 months after that, the movie's plot basically comes true with the Apollo 13 crisis. Fact, fiction, and then fact again, all in under a year. This is the story of how a film's visual design didn't just tell a story, it accidentally foretold one.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, the big challenge facing Hollywood in '69. Then we'll meet the visual architects behind the whole thing. We'll look at how they designed these 3 distinct worlds, how they used light to really dial up the human drama. And finally, we'll get to that eerie visual prophecy I mentioned. All right, Section 1, the 1969 challenge. You have to put yourself in their shoes. After Apollo 11, the whole world had a front row seat to actual space travel. We saw it live on our TVs. So the big question for Hollywood was, how in the world do you fake space for an audience that just saw the real thing? It's a massive problem, right?
Now, here's a little twist for you. Can you guess who was originally supposed to direct this movie? None other than Frank Capra. Yeah, the guy who did It's a Wonderful Life. It's almost impossible to imagine, right? The ultimate feel-good director tackling a grim space disaster.
But here's the thing. The studio offered him just $3 million for a complex space movie. Capra, understandably, walked away. The film ended up costing $8 million. That's almost triple what they offered him. And the really sad part? Frank Capra never directed another movie. Just makes you wonder what his version of Marooned would have looked like. So with Capra out, it was time to bring in the big guns. A new team of, let's call them visual architects, was put together. And really, it came down to 3 key people who would design this believable disaster from the ground up. You had John Sturges as director, and this guy was a master of those huge widescreen epics, perfect for showing the sheer scale of space. Then there was Lyle Wheeler, the production designer. He was the guy who had to physically build everything you see. And the final piece of the puzzle, cinematographer Daniel L. Fapp, the artist who was going to paint it all with light. And just so you understand the kind of talent we're talking about with Fapp, look at this. By the time he signed on for Marooned, he'd already been nominated for 6 Oscars and had won for West Side Story. This movie would get him his 7th nomination. The guy was an absolute legend, a true master. Okay, so you've got this all-star team. How did they actually solve that big realism problem? Well, their first solution was all about building the world with what I'd call brutal authenticity. And they did it by creating 3 totally separate visual worlds. First up, the capsule itself. Super claustrophobic. And to make it real, they didn't just build a set out of plywood. No way. They got a real block eye Apollo boilerplate, which, chillingly, was the same design from the Apollo 1 fire. So what you're seeing on screen, they're lighting real metal, real aerospace materials. Every glint, every reflection, it's authentic. Okay, world number 2, mission control. That sterile fishbowl where everything happens. And again, instead of faking it on a soundstage, they went to the source. They filmed on location at the actual NASA Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston. This gave the whole thing this documentary vibe. You can feel that clinical, almost bureaucratic tension of trying to solve a crisis from millions of miles away. And then there's the third world, home. The astronauts' wives are shown in these warm, traditional, very normal houses. And that's not an accident. That visual contrast is so important. It's the heart versus the machine. It constantly reminds you, the viewer, of the real human lives at stake here, far away from all that cold, hard technology. And, this focus on gritty reality is what makes it so different from that other big space movie from around the same time. You think of Kubrick's 2001, and it's this pristine, sterile, white, almost metaphysical journey about where humanity is going. Marooned is the complete opposite. It's greasy, it's dark, it's mechanical. It's not about where we're going, it's about where we're stuck, trapped in a tin can that's falling apart. But just building a realistic world, that's only half the battle, right? You have to make the audience feel the drama, the fear of being trapped in that machine. So that brings us to their second big solution, using light and shadow to actually tell the story.
What Daniel Fapp did was just brilliant. He basically created a 3-act story just with his lighting. Act 1. Everything's normal. The light is bright, it's balanced, everything feels under control. Act 2. They have to power down to save oxygen. Suddenly, the capsule becomes this dark cave, lit only by the eerie glow of the instrument panels. And then, Act 3. The rescue attempt. It's pure chaos. Blinding flashes of white light, deep black silhouettes. The lighting is the tension.
And he didn't just do this in the capsule. Back on Earth, he lit Gregory Peck, who plays the head of Mission Control, like he was a statue. He used this classic technique called Rembrandt lighting, where you have one strong light source from the side and above. It just carves out a person's face, you know? It emphasizes every line, every worry. It literally makes the weight of command visible on his face, turning that famous Gregory Peck troubled frown into a masterpiece of shadow and light.
Okay, so this is where things get really, really weird. All of this hard work, this obsession with visual realism, it led to something nobody could have ever predicted. The film became an accidental and, frankly, eerie prophecy. What they designed for the screen was about to happen for real. So the central crisis in the movie, the thing that kicks everything off, is a catastrophic explosion in an oxygen tank that leaves 3 astronauts stranded. Sound familiar? Less than 4 months after this film came out, Apollo 13 had the exact same emergency. It's just unbelievable. And the coincidences just keep piling up. Get this, the commander of Apollo 13, Jim Lovell, and his wife Marilyn, they had just gone to see Marooned a few months before his mission. Marilyn later said the film gave her these awful, vivid nightmares about her husband dying in space. And that real-life experience, it's what directly inspired that famous nightmare sequence in the movie Apollo 13 that Ron Howard made years later. Life imitates art, which imitates life. It's a total loop. So the legacy of this film is just huge. I mean, it was a direct inspiration for modern movies like Gravity, but it goes way beyond that. The plot of the movie involves a potential rescue by the Soviets. Well, that fictional idea was actually discussed during the real-life planning for the Apollo-Soyuz mission in 1975. The movie literally became a kind of blueprint for international cooperation in space. And even though NASA was a little hesitant at first, they eventually gave the film an official commendation for being so accurate. So, when you look back at it, Marooned is so much more than just a 1960s disaster movie. It was a masterclass in visual problem solving. It's a time capsule of a very specific moment in history, and of course, it was an accidental prophecy. And it all happened because a group of incredible visual artists had the guts to ask and answer a really profound question. How do you actually light hope running out? Thanks for joining this explainer.